Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish, and I'm joined today by Drew Hill, the Grizzlies beat writer for the Daily Memphian. Drew, how's it going?
What's up? I'm very glad I didn't sleep through this after overtime late night game last night.
Nothing like an overtime West Coast game.
That's all we needed. They never make it easy on us. Never, ever when they go to the West Coast, it feels like. So, yeah. But no, that was a fun game last night. I enjoyed it.
It was a very fun game. We've definitely hit the stretch of the season. We've been in this stretch of the season where we're no longer crushed by losses. We're like, all right, that's fun. You know what? We hung with them, much like the Thunder game on Saturday. We stayed pretty close. The guys played pretty well. Good game. Not having a restless night laying in bed afterwards being like, how do we let that one get away? Oh, we had it. No, it was a fun game. Honestly, I feel like maybe though, if we turned it off after regulation, could have been a little bit happier. The overtime.
Yeah. Well, I felt like they were going to win 3 times.
Oh, okay. So one was the Santi Aldama steal.
I felt like, yeah. I
The
thought they were going to
steal,
win.
the and one. You're like, oh, we're going to win this. Okay. What were the other two?
When Bain scored again,
Yeah.
I was like, gosh, I mean, Sacramento's made everything here late. Like, they're going to get a stop and win.
Yeah.
They didn't get a stop.
That's
But
reigning clutch player of the year. De'Aaron Fox made the jumper after Desmond Bain's go ahead layup, like
consideration.
30 seconds left. Yeah.
And then Gigi was standing wide open. Open.
Okay. So we can, this is one of my big takeaways from this game. So a few things. Gigi Jackson had a great game, like a really good Gigi Jackson game, extremely efficient, was picking his spots, was nailing open threes, was moving in transition, getting some easy buckets that way. But then he has a wide open corner three to win the game. And the man airballed it by like 4 feet. Like that.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway for me. It was, I don't know if you remember this. It was reminiscent of a famous Peja Stojakovic shot. Peja Stojakovic in the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers. I believe this is the Mike Bibby gets elbowed in the head by Kobe Bryant. The foul's on Mike Bibby. This is the one where Ralph Nader wanted Congress to look into NBA officiating. So controversial series, but the Kings still had a chance to win the game. The best maybe shooter in the NBA at that point, Peja Stojakovic, wide open from the corner, airballs it. Like 5 feet wide, 3 feet short. And for me and my friends back in the day, this was like, we could never stop talking about it. Like Peja Stojakovic was forever ruined because of this wide open miss. Of course, Gigi's a rookie. He's 19, youngest player in the NBA. It's not the same stakes, but that wide open miss really colored my takeaway where I was like, oh, that was pretty horrible.
Yeah, I know, because he had played so well. You're right, leading up to that. And I just, I've obviously I've been in Gigi's corner all year. He's like, I believe in the kid. I think he's going to be a tremendous basketball player. But I think there are parts to this that are interesting to me, because since February 1st, Gigi's taking more than 13 shots a game. Like, he's shooting a lot. And I don't blame him, because they need him to shoot it. But that's what Ja was taking when Ja was a rookie. Ja was taking 14 shots a game when he was a rookie. Gigi's not going to take this many shots again next year. It's just not. While Ja's shots went up, Gigi's shots are going to come back down when everybody's healthy. And it's all about efficiency. And with him, it feels like he's just this really streaky player. that like runs really hot for 5 games and then just
Yeah.
misses everything for 3 games and then runs really hot for another 3 games right after that. So there's all of these, spurts from him. But when it's in a more concentrated role with fewer shots, are we going to feel the same way? And I was wondering that last night.
Yeah. I will say in the Thunder game, which of course was the first time that Gigi and Desmond Bane had played together. In the Thunder game, there were moments where I was like, Gigi, like swing the ball, but in this one, I will say, as mad or as upset / disappointed as I was in the air ball, I thought he actually did pick his spots where he was taking, again, the open shots, and like it was all encouraging. I mean, you're right. Like the usage is going to come way down. He's probably not starting next year. So like that's not a big problem. But yeah, the miss stuck out to me. But here's the good thing. Here's the great thing. In my opinion, the amazing thing about Gigi's miss. This specifically is why I wanted Desmond Bane to play and not get shut down. This is why I want Jaren Jackson Jr. to play and not get shut down, because I wanted Gigi Jackson and Jake LaRavia to be put in circumstances where the games had stakes. And I hope that air ball by Gigi, that playing in overtime, that clutch game on the road against a very good team is going to benefit Gigi Jackson down the line. I don't feel like they're in that situation. They're in that game if Desmond Bane isn't playing. So I hope that part of it, I mean, even if he made the shot and all the tankathon people are like, no, we won, like that messed up our draft pick. No. In my mind, the clutch minutes that Gigi Jackson played alongside Desmond and Jaren and getting the wide open shot. And hopefully the next time he gets it, he does a little bit better. Maybe it isn't a lifelong issue of like, this guy disappears in the clutch. Like he's made big shots all season. But I feel like this game on the road against Sacramento, like that is an important moment. And so I do feel like, I hope that can be like a learning moment, a building moment that maybe we wouldn't have gotten if Desmond Bane just, pieced out for the rest of the year.
I do think that's a good point. And you're right. He has hit big shots this year. I mean, the Golden State game comes to mind when you think back to Gigi. He made 2 pretty big threes late in that game. And so you're right. The moment is not too big for him. But the moment is not too big for him maybe because he doesn't overthink the moment. He's just this most happy-go-lucky kid. So when you're like, I want him to play meaningful basketball games, almost like I want the fact that he missed that shot to sting. I just don't see Gigi in the locker room agonizing over missing that last shot, just because that's just his personality.
Yeah.
But I do think being in those moments helps. Like getting those repetitions helps. And so that's great. It's interesting that you included Jake there.
Well, I mean, might as well. We're playing out the string. They clearly, so my thought was
Jake and Gigi are not the same.
They're not the same. Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
No.
But I do feel like the coaching staff, maybe if you were desperately hoping to win this basketball game, you put back in International Paper Player of the Game, John Conchar, over Jake LaRavia. They notably did not. Jake LaRavia played the final 24 minutes consecutively. Like he didn't sub back out once he came in the third quarter. Conchar, who had a whale of a game, he had 10 rebounds and 4 steals. Oh, he had everything. 2 blocks. Conchar doesn't come back in. They're playing Jake LaRavia, and in my mind, that was more of a developmental choice. And Jake's been playing well. I mean, Jake, outside of the shooting, like Jake's been pretty good. The guy hustles, and this game was so it was so scrappy. It had like the vague essence of playoffs. If you squint and don't look at who the players were on the court, it was refereed very loosely, which the NBA has been doing a bit of recently. There were some calls that did not go our way. There was a foul on Jake LaRavia where we challenged it. Do you remember this play? Like we challenged it. I don't see where Jake LaRavia touched the guy. And that was a tie game with like 2 minutes and 40 seconds left. So Jake got robbed of a block right there. I mean, Jake had 8 rebounds, 12 points, but I do feel like maybe it was a developmental choice to leave him in these crunch time moments.
I feel like it probably was. On the foul, I mean, all I can imagine is that they had some angle that we didn't see or something. Like I'm trying to give the officials the benefit of the doubt, but clearly in all of the angles that we saw, he doesn't touch him. And it was such a quick review too. It was a snap review. They looked at it, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a foul."
It's one of those
didn't know what
where
to think there.
Staring at the overhead cam, which is the one that you like, there's tons of space in between him. I was like, is this like a optical illusion? Is there like is there a different cam where you're like, oh no, he hits him? So I was definitely lost about that play. But I would say, yeah, Jake continues hustling. It's been a nice run of games for him. It's everything but the shot. He also got not robbed. He stepped out of bounds, but like his line would have been even better if that into the first quarter rainbow three had counted where he stepped out of bounds. So like, Jake played pretty well, but yeah, you're right. Obviously not the same as GG Jackson.
I'm having to come back around a little bit on Jake, because for as like excitable as I find GG Jackson, when Jake came back from injury, I usually pod with Chris Harrington. We're doing our podcast, and on one end you have, Chris saying, "Well, I'd like to see him," and I'm saying, "I think I've seen enough. I don't know how much more I need to see." Like, because the G League numbers were the G League numbers, and they weren't super efficient, and they didn't jump off the page. And some of these guys, like even Roddy, would go down there and post pretty good numbers with the hustle. And so I just thought I had seen enough. The fact that he's rebounding the ball is forcing me to say, all right, well, maybe there's still a chance here. Because if he wasn't rebounding, this conversation would be over. Like, that we wouldn't be thinking about Jake LaRavia as a future piece. I do wonder, like, will they go into next year with LaRavia and Zaire Williams? And where you stand on that? I mean, I still think I'd rather have Zaire, but I'm not so sure they're going to take both guys into next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at, are you going to keep? I think you got to throw Conchar in there as well.
He makes so much. It's going to be hard to get off.
Yeah, I mean, my guess has always been, when you look at the salary restrictions, some of those might be self-imposed, how much they're willing to pay luxury tax. Like, you're probably not paying whatever it is, $14 to $15 million combined for those three players, Jake LaRavia, Zaire Williams, and John Conchar. John Conchar is the more consistent and dependable guy. He's just a known commodity. He can help you, preferably your 10th to 13th man or something. My long running thing for 2 years now has been make Jitty the 12th man again. I want to get 11 players clearly better than him, which we don't have at all. Again, he was awesome last night. Conchar was. Yeah, I don't know. I think you probably need to pick, especially if you're burning roster spots like on Derrick Rose again next year. I mean, come on, Derrick, you can retire. I'm just throwing that out there. If you want to, you can. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do think him being under contract at the very least, if he doesn't get traded, I think like the one roster spot that maybe a lot of Grizzlies fans have penciled in that's not going to be there is like Luke Kennard. Like Luke Kennard, I think good chance, he gets traded on draft night. And if on this draft night trade or, before free agency starts, in one of those trades, you're probably sending out another player, be it, Utah, who might opt in. And then is it Zaire or LaRavia? I mean, here's the thing. I don't mind if Zaire and LaRavia are on the team next year, but also if they're gone, we can replace them. Those are the talent level where it's like, all right, you put 2 years in on LaRavia, you put 4 in on Zaire, or 3, like you can replace. I'm pretty sure this is a guy that you could replace his production level. So I don't think I'm gonna be torn up either way. Where do you land on it?
And with your guy Vince, and Marcus, frankly, if they're healthy, you found your answers on the wing. Like you got them. There's no reason to panic. It's the end of the world if one of these guys is the better player and you end up trading that guy versus the other guy. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. These aren't major impact players, but I found your Luke Kennard comment interesting, just because they've talked about why they kept Luke Kennard through the trade deadline. Like they still see value in him.
Yeah.
But if they were to move on from Luke Kennard on draft night, I think that makes things really interesting. And I've always thought that that was a bit of an option as well, because when you look at sort of the talent at the top of the draft, they don't necessarily have to take a player in the 5 to 6 range, or even, I mean, obviously they want to move up and get the best talents in the draft. But I don't think the type of player they're looking for necessarily is in that range. So they could easily trade back. You can package something with Luke. I think you create a lot more options for yourself if that were to be the case. It also opens you up to taking a different type of player. Like, I love Reed Sheppard at Kentucky. I think he's great. There's nobody who is more poised in the college game than him. He's a great 3-point shooter. The guy just doesn't make mistakes. And that would be a player that is useful on any NBA team. Any team. You can put him on any team and he can be a productive player. Is he a good fit for the Grizzlies? No. But if Luke Kennard weren't there, maybe you take a guard, maybe you take a wing. I think there's the options open up for you if that is indeed something that they do. And they've talked like they have interest in keeping him as well, though. I mean, I do think they still view him as a valuable piece.
To push back on they talk like they value him. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but I would say, what else are they going to say after you don't trade a guy? It's like, oh no, we really value his spacing. And we look at the playoff numbers, the net rating when him and Ja and Desmond Bane played together. I look at it more, and I always have for a while now, like you have Ja and Desmond, and you have Marcus Smart, and our guy, Vince Williams, who also kind of plays the 2. Like, those are 4 guys better than Luke Kennard. I think if you end up with that 8th, 9th pick, which again, statistically fairly likely, the 8th, 9th pick plus Luke Kennard, you start thinking, is that enough to get something? Or as you say, if you jump up and like Reed Sheppard's there or something, maybe that would make sense for the team. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the draft picks in a little bit. Let's wrap up this Kings game. I need to point out that Gigi, his line, 22 points, 7 rebounds, a career high 3 steals, in a career high 43 minutes played. We haven't even mentioned Jaren and Desmond. I mean, as much as like we kind of pick on, or I'm picking on Gigi for his air ball, and like we could have used a little bit more accuracy from Jaren and Desmond. I will say in overtime, Desmond looked cooked. I mean, I think that maybe was the conditioning.
Legs were gone.
His return to play. Yeah. Like he had that one, the layup we talked about with like 30 seconds left. Yeah. If that was his like one blow by in the final 10 minutes of the whole game, he got his shot blocked so many times. Keon Ellis, credit to him for coming in for Kevin Huerter, but I think he has a career high 4 blocks for him. Bane looked cooked. Him and Jaren combined to go 15 for 46 on their field goal attempts. The team shot 38%. That was the 15th game this year where the Grizzlies were under 40%. That is by far the most games for any team in the NBA this year. Santi Aldama played really, really well. Santi had that play we mentioned where he stole the ball. I don't know what to make of Santi. All right, in February, 8 points per game. Started 11 games, 8 points per game. In March, he is averaging 13 points per game. So I think I got that right. Yeah, 13 points per game. His minutes are up a little bit. I mean, somewhat thanks to the last couple of games. Is it just that's Santi? The only consistency is inconsistency?
That's a little bit of Santi, but I do think that if I'm trying to get a gauge on who he is as a player, he's closer to March than February. I think I believe that. Because the offensive skill is just, it's there. You see this type of stuff happen in practice and games, and like all of that is none of it is fake numbers, I guess I should say. Like he can get his own shots. He can make open shots. He does it. He plays an important role for you because he's a stretch big. And I think he just went through a little bit of a confidence dump there in February, and it's starting to come back a little bit more now. I mean, you got to remember, like, he played pretty well too last year when he started for Jaren at the beginning of the season when Jaren was hurt. And we all kind of were like, whoa, this is the Santi that we're going to get. And like, he's never played that role ever since. Jaren came back, and Jaren's been great. And so there's been this, I think given more opportunity, he's already proven that he can do more.
Yeah.
He's just got to find a way to do it more efficiently in this particular role. Same thing we talked about with Gigi, like how can, if this is a supremely talented player, it's like, okay, how are we going to cram all of what you do well into these limited minutes because you have other people in front of you?
Yeah. So Santi had 14 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block. He's been in double figures 7 of the last 8 games. This is kind of repeating the February versus March number. He was in single digits in 6 of the 7 before that. I want to hear from you about the Marcus Smart ejection and a few more things for this game. And then we'll look ahead to the prospects in the NCAA tournament. We'll do it right after this quick break. Underdog Fantasy is a unique fantasy gaming experience where you can play for cash. You can play in daily fantasy tournaments. You can play in season-long best ball tournaments. You can pick highers or lowers to see your winnings really add up. Now, if you want to try Underdog Fantasy, you can use promo code FBBF, and Underdog will match your opening deposit up to $100. Give Underdog Fantasy a try. Use that promo code FBBF or click the link in this episode's description. All right, so it didn't really matter, but in overtime, Marcus Smart, while in street clothes, got ejected. It seemed like maybe he was very mad about the non-call of some defensive 3 seconds. What's your opinion on this ejection? Because I have a strong one.
Yours is probably stronger than mine. I think it's fine that he got ejected. It said, look, Marcus Smart's got the money. He can pay. He's
standing up for the rules.
Standing up for the rules. Nobody calls defensive 3 seconds hardly ever anyway, but I guess if he was pointing it out multiple times, that would be frustrating. They did get a tough whistle late in that game.
Yeah.
So that's definitely understandable that they were frustrated too. I think the main takeaway is like, hey, it looks like they still care. Like if Marcus Smart still cares this much that he's getting ejected, that tells you that this team wants to win. They're not just like, all right, let's figure out how we're going to intentionally lose. Or maybe he's just secretively
maybe he was
getting
in on
ejected
it, Drew.
on
You're
purpose to let the other team shoot free throws to ensure that they were going to lose.
Yeah, he's like, we're only down 8. I think being down 10 would feel more comfortable. Couple of things. Getting ejected for screaming about 3 seconds, it's loser behavior. I don't want to be too strong about this.
Wow.
It gives me flashbacks to when I was a referee and there were parents screaming 3 seconds all the time. You had like high schoolers missing layups over and over and over. And of course the 3 second call resets on every shot attempt. So everyone's screaming for 3 seconds. Maybe I have PTSD as a former high school ref. It's loser behavior. Let's play basketball. Stop yelling about 3 seconds. Also, more importantly, he was like holding his 3 fingers up and like yelling at the ref, holding his 3 fingers up. That's how he dislocated his finger in the first place, was holding up 3 fingers on the 3-point celebration. I was terrified. I was like, put those fingers away, Marcus. You're supposed to come back from injury. Can't have you throwing your fingers around.
Marcus is going to be okay. Like I said,
okay.
He got the wallet for it.
Okay.
Maybe he just wanted to make a statement to his team,
There you go.
That he's still there. He's still in their corner. I don't know if he accomplished that or not by yelling about 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Listen, I sit next to this is like it sounds like a brag, but it's not.
Yeah.
I sit next to the court for every Grizzlies game. Like right. I hear if you heard half of the stuff that the players complain about on a game-to-game basis,
yeah,
I think most people would be like surprised. Like every single huddle, they're talking about like so-and-so, when I go over on this play, he's grabbing my jersey. Like you need to, and it's just so specific. And I think that if Marcus Smart had been yelling at him for like 10 minutes and they never got a call or whatever, maybe he was frustrated. I think it more had to do with what was going on in the game.
That makes sense. Marcus is supposed to come back. Have we heard anything? I mean, not to hold the team. I don't think he's coming back. Okay. Not to hold the team to a strict timeline based on their injury releases, but we're 5 days overdue for the update on what Marcus, what his finger's doing. So you don't think he's coming back?
I would be surprised if he played again. Yeah.
Why do you think did they not sign an extra player for this game on Tuesday? Because Wenyen Gabriel's 10-day expired. They only had 8 bodies. I was a little bit surprised with Desmond Bain and only a second game back. They're like, well, let's roll with 8.
I don't know the exact answer to that. I should ask around. I think when you look at who they have here and who they have coming up, you would want to add a 9th player, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's an idea. There's a guy named Kendrick Davis that happens to play for the Warriors G League team. You play the Warriors in the next game. Let's get Kendrick on a 10-day.
Let's pull him up. I mean, I figured, does Wenyen Gabriel still have an apartment in Sacramento? I feel like he played there for a while. I was surprised.
Was that his last stop?
He was on the Lakers for a while last year.
That's right.
He might have been the whole year on the Lakers. A lot of the year on the Lakers.
Wenyen is like, he belongs on an NBA roster, I think. I mean, he's just a hustle guy. He's not like, but he could totally play on an NBA team at the end of the rotation.
He's just, I don't know. He's roster filler. Like he's not a guy anyone needs unless you have 8 players. And then you're like, we could probably use another body. Couple more stats. John Conchar was credited with 8 deflections in this game. Also to go with all those numbers, with the 6 points, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks, 4 steals, 2 blocks. Incredible stuff. Shout out Santi and also Diki Giroux for the tandem dunk, the rarely seen tandem dunk. Also, the Grizzlies allowed 16 points in overtime after only allowing 21 points in the 4th quarter. Let's wrap up here with a little preview of maybe some guys to look out for in the NCAA tournament coming up, because the Grizzlies, they maintained their standing in the Tankathon standings barely, but they're very likely to pick 7th, 8th, or 9th in this year's draft, and there's like a 30 to 40% chance they'll jump up to the top 4. I have not really gotten in on the draft prospects, even though I know I'm supposed to. I can't trick myself into being interested. I'm trying to be interested in like college basketball, and like I can't. But who are some guys that we should maybe have our eyes out for? Because I know you've been following college much more closely. I mean, everyone follows it more closely than me. But who should we be watching for in the upcoming tournament this weekend?
You shouldn't have to trick yourself, because I just love college basketball. So, and I know some people do not, because the shot making is just like, it's just a different game altogether. But I like it. Yeah. And so, and we're obviously hosting games in Memphis this week. And if you follow my work, you probably know I've been writing a little bit about that. That's coming up this week. I'm going to have stories about all kinds of different teams that'll be here in Memphis. So I just love it. I love watching it. So I've been a big time consumer. Donovan Clingan, the center at Connecticut, is like the one that kind of jumps off the page. I think he fits the profile a lot of different ways. He is a big center, over 7 feet tall, who rebounds the ball well, has extremely efficient offensive numbers, isn't like the best athlete, but does, if you want the Steven Adams archetype, and Steven Adams archetype that can shoot a little bit of threes, like this is kind of your guy. And he plays on the most dominant team in college basketball. I don't think there's any way that they're not going on a little bit of a run. They should be playing on the second weekend for sure. Played his best game in the Big East Championship over the weekend. So, and like, let's remember the Grizzlies have members on staff who played at UConn and know the program well. And I would be shocked if they hadn't done their homework heavily on a guy like Donovan Clingan. So if you're going to go like, this is how we're going to fix our front court, draft a guy in the top 10, because that's probably where he's going to go, anywhere between like 12 to 5 or 6. That, I mean, if that's the route that they choose, which I'm not certain it will be, but if that's what they choose, then that's definitely a guy I'd be interested in.
So he plays, by the way, so sorry to interrupt. UConn plays on Friday. They're a 1 seed. Is there any interest in watching his teammate? Is it Stefan Castle? Is it Stefan or Stefan? Yeah. I'm just looking at mock draft boards. He's pretty high on a lot of the mock draft boards.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't intrigue me as much because I don't know if there's just like an obvious fit. Yeah. Like of the guards, I haven't like specifically watched UConn to watch Castle, But I've watched Kentucky to watch Dillingham and Shepherd a lot.
Yes.
Especially recently. I just saw them play in the SEC tournament. And so, like, if you're going to go that route and look at guards, I mean, those are the two that I've probably watched the most of so far. I've watched Dalton Knecht too at Tennessee. But Shepherd is like, he's like, I believe on the last Ringer mock draft was projected to go number 1 overall. And this is a kid that is the son of Jeff Shepherd, former Kentucky basketball player from the 90s.
That's back when I watched. I remember Jeff Shepherd very well.
Yeah. Who was not this highly rated recruit and kind of grew up in middle of nowhere Kentucky and gets to the program where his dad plays and just shocks everybody with how good he is. He is so poised. Like, you cannot speed him up. You just can't. And he only makes good decisions. He doesn't make mistakes. He's an efficient player. He's a great 3-point shooter. He can get to the basket. He's good in the mid-range. Like, he does it all. And so I see it when some people are like, I cannot believe they have him going in the top 3 of the draft. I can see it. He's just going to be a productive player at the next level because of that poise. Like, because he plays his own game and he does that so well. Could that fit on the Grizzlies roster? I think so, especially if you don't have, the same backcourt, or if Luke Kennard gets dealt or something along those lines. I think you could make it work. I mean, Rob Dillingham's the other one. He's the other Kentucky guard.
Yeah.
Who's projected to go really high. He's a little different. Like, he can be a little wild and out of control sometimes, but like the offensive skill just is insane. The shot making is bananas. The defense doesn't exist. So, I mean, do you really want another like Morant prototype? I don't know. So I don't know if he fits well at all, but he could be a microwave scorer off the bench,
What's your thought on Dalton Knecht? Because like that guy's there's obviously an overlap in fan bases. There's a lot of Tennessee Volunteer fans who are Grizzlies fans. And, I feel like if the Grizzlies ended up with like that 8th or 9th pick, I mean, would that be someone they would consider?
Maybe. It just depends too. Like, what I like about Dalton Knecht is that he's not a project by any means, like he's older. What you're getting and what you see is kind of what you're going to get in the NBA. Man, he had a terrible game in the SEC tournament when I was there. Like, the Mississippi State shut him down. And that was, so I don't know if I got to see the best of Dalton Knecht. But I do think that the shot making is obviously a big plus. If you're scoring 40 points in a college game, like in a 40-minute game, you got some offensive skill. Positionally, I do wonder if skill set wise, that's what the Grizzlies are looking for. Because like, that's the big thing. Is like, for me, when I first started thinking about the upcoming draft and watching some of these games, and we should note, I can tell you for sure the Grizzlies are doing their homework on the international players.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the NCAA tournament. So we're leaving out guys.
We're leaving out basically the top of every mock draft, which is a bunch of either G League and or internationals. Yeah.
So let's just note that.
Yeah.
But when I first started thinking about the Grizzlies draft, I would think about it in terms of like, okay, like what center are they going to go get? And Chris Harrington was like, yeah, well, I think of it more as like, what skill sets do they need?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way of looking at it. But when you ask yourself, what skill sets do they need like a lot. They need 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
For sure. Like that. Are you going to get 3-point shooting in a big? Probably not the level of 3-point shooting that you would like. So I think that, when you choose to look at it beyond just the front court, the options open up a lot. And like, so that's like a player like Dalton Knecht. You would think that with Vince and Marcus, you don't need necessarily a player like Dalton Knecht, who's not really going to be a true point guard. He's kind of, a tweener in between a guard and a small forward. But there's different ways of looking at it. You can look at it as we're going to take the best player available. We're going to take a skill set that we need, or we're just positionally, we need a front court. We need a big center, and that's the way we're going to do it. And I'll be interested to see what the Grizzlies say about their thought process after the draft, because I think there are a number of different directions that they could go here. In terms of other prospects, just so that we can cross some teams off of the list, I would watch Baylor Yves Missy. I don't know if he is if his skill set necessarily suits the Grizzlies, because he's a good offensive rebounder, not a strong defensive rebounder. I don't know I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I don't know when Baylor plays, but I would watch him. Has some offensive talent.
Play Friday against Colgate.
Watch that. I personally, the Grizzlies aren't going to draft this guy where he plays, and he's not in the tournament, but like, go watch Khalil Ware at Indiana.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he's a pretty good player. And he's long, he's tall, he's not necessarily like your big bruising big, but he's pretty effective. And I think with his size, he can do some work in the NBA. I think he's physically set up to perform well. So I like watching him. And I watched him a lot in the conference tournament this last week, and he played pretty well. So if you want to see him, you can go check that out too. Trying to think of who else.
So the internet tells me that so there's also Jacoby Walter on Baylor, Yves Missy's teammate, who's more of a guard. He's projected to go pretty high in some drafts. So like I'll keep an eye on him. A guy positionally who seems like a need for the Grizzlies, who's projected to go very high, is Cody Williams from Colorado, who plays on Wednesday night in the first 4. So maybe I'll be able to turn away from some NBA games on Wednesday night to try to watch a little bit of Cody Williams. Spoiler.
Just do me a favor. Promise me one thing.
Yeah.
If, as somebody that is semi into college basketball like yourself, do not watch the Virginia first 4 game. Okay. Virginia and Colorado State play in the first 4. I believe they play tonight.
Okay.
And Colorado plays tomorrow.
Yeah.
Whatever you do not watch the Virginia game. You might hate college basketball.
Oh, is it just disgusting? They have that one guy, Dunn, who's a defender, right?
Yes. Virginia plays the absolute dumbest, slowest pace there is. They take every shot with 1 second left on the shot clock. They only play defense. Their offense is completely atrocious. It is the most boring basketball. And then you factor in Colorado State also plays some of the dumbest, slowest basketball you've ever seen in your life. I believe the total in that game is like 118. Like, it's going to be in the 40s. So don't watch it.
Yeah, I won't.
I don't want college. I don't want people that want to like college basketball tuning into a game like that.
Well, see, that's not a problem there. You called me semi-interested. I'm zero interested in college, and I have no interest I can't take it. I used to watch it all the time, and now the skill level / even the officiating. I can't handle the officiating. It just seems like a random every whistle. I have no idea what the official's going to make up. It's just
the officiating is truly terrible.
Yeah.
Like they used to call everything a charge in college basketball. Now there's just no charges anymore.
Well, they fixed that. That part is where they're trying to draw me back. This is one thing I was tracking because I'm pretty opposed to a lot of the NBA's charge rules. In college basketball, they kind of addressed it. My understanding was, again, I haven't watched college basketball to know if this is the case, but apparently they made it where like almost everything is on the defense. And I'm like, as long as they need to, in my mind, the referees need to shade to no calls on a lot of those, but like I'm all about calling way fewer charges.
Well, will you fill out a bracket?
I will, and it is one of my least favorite 10 minutes of my month. It's because like I don't know anything. It's like it's one of those things where I used to know it, like somebody on every team, and like I'd research it, and now I'm just like it's just clicking. They have those like auto populate your draft, and I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that. We can wrap up the closing. I think, I don't know if they would address it. You talked about like team need and like what kind of player you're going to get in the draft. We don't know specifically when they're going to get these players. And like, when you think about guards and wings, they could get someone, or maybe they don't, like the Grizzlies, that is. But the one thing I think we do know is before next year, they're going to add a center, and it doesn't have to be in the draft, but it could be. So like either through a draft, through trade, through free agency, I feel almost certain they're going to add someone tall, in the next however many months. So that's, I guess, where I think a lot of us, maybe when we're parachuting in, trying to learn some draft stuff, we're like, oh, Kyle Filipowski, or whoever,
right.
We're like, because I'm pretty sure the Grizzlies are going to add a center to help out Santi and Jaren for next year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would say that if you're like trying to to predict the most likely routes. I mean, free agency is the least likely, right? Just because they're not going to have a ton of space. I mean, again, there's factors here depending on who could get traded. You can create it for yourself. But I do also think you have to think about it in terms of this as well. Like I would say that the draft is probably the most likely place that they're going to add in the front court, although it's close, that in a trade. But you also, I would think about it this way. If you're the Grizzlies, like if you are going to move off some pieces and try to add a high level to mid-high level caliber NBA starting center, are you going to be able to replace the pieces that you're trading away in the draft? Potentially, even if you're trading that draft pick. If you're not trading that draft pick and you're letting go of Luke Kennard and other future assets or whatever, are you going to be able to replace that with somebody in the draft like a Rob Dillingham or Jacoby Walter or Cody Williams or anything like that? I mean, that's one way to think about it. Or do you feel better suited that a big man's going to come in and help you right away? Because you're at the stage now where you're supposed to be contending, and adding through the draft right away and trying to contend isn't necessarily a great formula, in my opinion, because a lot of these guys take time to become productive NBA players. So we'll see what happens. There's a number of different routes. I think you're 100% right. They are going to add a center somehow, some way. I personally view a bruising, screen setting center, particularly with a little bit of passing ability. I know I'm describing Steven Adams, but it is kind of what you need. You got to think about Ja. He's your best player. He has barely been on the court this year, but he's your best player. You need a player that works best with Ja, and that's what they should factor as they're trying to put these pieces together.
Yep. I agree with you there. Well, Drew, thanks so much for hanging out and talking Grizzlies and NCAA with me. All you guys out there, check out Drew's work at the Daily Memphian. Listen to the Daily Memphian's Grizzlies podcast. It's a must listen for me and Drew. I look forward to you coming on again sometime.
Yep. Thanks.